Thank you, Kari. How many of you are athletes? Or my favorite people, I used to be an athlete. Well, like many kids growing up, I wanted to be good at sports. And Kari, I was terrible. Have you ever met anyone who struck out playing t-ball? All right. Well, after one baseball game, I went up to my dad and I said, Dad, I want to run home. And my dad looked at me and goes, you want to run home? I go, yeah, I want to run home. I'm just really frustrated. He goes, fine. And he gets in his car, he honks, waves, and takes off, and I take out running. Now you got to understand, this was in the early 70s. It was a different time. We lived in a very small community. In fact, the community was so small that when my parents moved in, they doubled the number of registered Democrats in the town. And everybody knew everybody. And I guess my dad figured somebody would pick me up. We lived a little over 3 miles from the baseball field, and I took off running. And I got home, I walked in the door, and my dad dropped his paper, and he looked at me, and he looked at his watch. And he looked at me, and he looked at his watch. And he's like, who picked you up? I said, nobody. I ran home. He goes, Matt, I think we found your sport. So I got into running. And running was a fabulous experience. Anyone who's been a runner, they understand that runner's high. Being out on the road, the wind in your face, the sun on your back, and that feeling of being exhausted and complete and fulfilled and good all at the same time. Finally came the day for my first race, and I was so excited. I was up on the starter line. The starter raised her pistol. She took off. She fired it, and we took off, and I felt... How many of you remember that television show back in the 1970s, the $6 Million Man? You know, no, 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 no. And that's when I realized that that's how fast I was actually running, because all of the boys were passing me. And then all of the girls. Out of 171 runners that day, I finished 171st. I was humiliated, defeated, depressed. I walked up to my dad and I said, Dad, that's it. Sports is not for me. I quit. And he looked at me and he said the strangest thing. You know, Rod, if you played sports, you know, coaches, quitters never win and winners never quit. Or you made a commitment, you got to stick through with it. No, he looked at me and said, well, Matt, you can't quit. Your team needs you. What? Dad, I couldn't even see the short little girl who finished in front of me. Nobody cares that I was here today. No one's going to care if I don't show up tomorrow. I'm done. And he looked at me in the way dads do, and he said, well, Matt, you're wrong. First of all, that little girl, she feels a whole lot better today because at least she beat you. Thanks, Dad. But more importantly, when you go back tomorrow, and you will, no one else has an excuse to quit. Your team needs you. I've thought about that over the years, because I think as we get older, we actually really think about the things our parents told us. And I think what he was trying to tell me is very simply, leadership is influence. And it's more than just influence, it's actually exercising your influence. Now, how does this lead into a cycling discussion? Here I am talking about running. Well, when I got into high school, all of a sudden I had to have practice before school. I had to be at school at 5 a.m. to run before school. And my dad worked until 11 p.m. And my mom was not getting up at 4:30 to take me to school. So we went to Kmart and bought a $59 10-speed bicycle, and I started biking to school in the morning with the light. And we lived about 5 miles from the school. And one of the days, the guy comes in and goes, how long does it take you to get here from home? And I'm like, I don't know, about 11, 12 minutes. And he's like, dude, you're really fast. And I'm like, okay. And that's how I got into cycling. And it turned out I was really good. In 1987, I was training for the Olympic trials. I didn't make it as an amateur cyclist. I just missed qualifying, and I probably never would have made the team, but I was good. And I've learned a lot of lessons over the years. So one of those lessons was early in my cycling career. Now, if you've ever watched the Tour de France or anything, you see the sprint finish, and that's where everyone's trying to come in and win. And my job on a sprint finish was one of the lead out men. I would be one of the men who would be up front on our team, and then I would peel off so that our sprinter could try to win the race. And so I'm coming down this home stretch, and I'm leading, getting ready to pull off, and I look over just out of the corner of my eye, I see a goddess, the most beautiful woman I had ever seen in my life to that point. And I got distracted. And because I got distracted, I took out 32 other riders. Now, afterwards, obviously, my coach wasn't happy with me and my teammates weren't happy with me. And all my team leader came up to me and goes, Matt, was she worth it? Now, here's somebody I've never spoken to her. I don't know her name. But my momentary distraction took me and the team out of action. What's distracting you from the mission in your club? Is it conflict? Is it administration? The mission of a Toastmasters club is to provide a supportive experience where all members can learn communication and leadership skills. When you're distracted, you're out of action. That race taught me a big lesson. You have to stay focused. One of the other types of races that I was in is called a criterion. And a criterion is a lap race. Usually you run for 45 minutes plus 1 lap, or 50 minutes plus 2 laps. So it's a timed race, and it's around a circuit that's usually 2 or 3 miles long. So you're running lap after lap. And one of the things in a criterion is if you get lapped, you're disqualified. And I was really frustrated. And I went up to my coach one day. I'm like, Coach, man, I just can't get this criterion. I keep getting lapped and I'm out of the race. And he's like, well, Matt, that's just part of the process. Keep it going. You'll be fine. And so that way we take off. I'm on the next to last lap. I just have to finish this lap and I'm going to finish the race. And I turn the last corner coming down the home stretch. And all of a sudden I hear a shout from the crowd. And I look back and there's my team leader barreling down on me all alone, sprinting towards the finish line. And all I can think of is, I'm going to get disqualified again. What's he doing? Why is he trying to pass me? He's got the race won. And I still don't know how I did it. I reached down and I out sprinted him to the line, and I was able to continue the race. In fact, some people actually thought I'd won the race because I'd held him off. They didn't realize I was a lap behind. And after the race, I was not happy. I ran up to him and I'm like, what are you doing to me? You had the race won. There was nothing that you needed to do to sprint. You could have walked across the line and won the race. Why were you trying to beat me to the line when you knew how important this was to me? And he said, Matt, there are no gifts in cycling. Oh, by the way, did you finish the race today? I was so mad at him, I actually had to think about it. I was like, oh, yeah, I did. He goes, you're welcome. And he walked off. Leadership, there are no gifts in leadership. Respect for position. If you think someone should respect you just because of the position you hold, society shows us today that respect for position has probably never been lower, especially in North America. Now, I think everyone is due respect. I think the Toastmasters core value of respect is not about earned respect. It's about the natural respect that every person is due to have their freedom, to have their voice heard, to have their life experience validated. But earned respect or admiration is not given. It is based on repetitive action, consistency of thought and action and words that displays respect towards the mission and the core values of the organization. If you're in a position of leadership, which you most likely are as an attendee today, whether it's in Toastmasters or in another position, there are no gifts. You have to earn the loyalty of those around you. Now, why is cycling different in leadership from so many other things? And one of the things I think it talks about is just the physics. Now, if we have any physicists in the room, please forgive this simple analogy. You'll be able to explain it much better than I will. But here's the basics of what happens in a bicycle race. And NASCAR is somewhat similar. All right, not quite as big of a difference, but somewhat similar. In a bicycle race, these lines here around these individuals represent the way air flows across a person, and air slows you down. You know, have you ever put your hand out the window while you're driving? You know, you feel that air. That's what we're talking about. And you can notice that the first driver, it's hitting him in his chest, and a lot of it's hitting him in his chest, one of the largest areas of your body to pick up the wind. And as he moves, that wind moves around, and you can see how much less air is hitting the person in second place. And if they're properly positioned and with a head-on wind, they can reduce their workload by a third, which leaves them more energy at the end of the race. You know, NASCAR, fuel saving, it's the same type of thing. They're saving fuel. You're saving your fuel in your tank to do that. The other thing they do to make sure that one person doesn't do this all the time is they have what's called a PACELINE. And what the PACELINE does, unfortunately, the video doesn't work on here, but the person in front peels off, spins around, and takes their position in the back. And each person in the PACELINE will take turns leading the race. So overall, they can go faster as a group than they can individually. And each person gets a chance to expend a little energy, then recover, then expend some energy and recover by getting back in the PACELINE. The basic message is that together is better. What does together mean in Toastmasters? Well, I think it means people doing their roles and supporting each other, and not trying to do somebody else's role, and not trying to be the individual who's making all the decisions or has to have his or her way, but coming to a group decision. And that's one of the areas where my evolution has been particular, because when I grew up, I had a deep-seated need to be right. All right. And if somebody challenged my rightness, it wasn't often seen as an opportunity to learn. It was often seen as an opportunity to start a debate or start an argument. And that was something I had to learn to make sure that I was bringing in those other perspectives. And on the board of directors, we have 19 voting members. We have a 20th member is our CEO who does not have a vote, but his voice is heard in the board meetings. And on the board, we have to hear all perspectives overall. Your club executive committee is the same way. Just because you're the president or VPE or VPM doesn't mean you make all of the decisions in that area. It means you lead that area and you get the perspectives of others to make the best decision overall. Together is better in leadership and in Toastmasters. But the other way that cycling is really different is in the role of the leader versus the role of the team. Now, the gentleman in yellow right here with the sky jersey is Chris Froome. He's won 4 Tour de France's. The record is 5. So he is one of the best cyclists in the history of the Tour de France. And where is he at? He's 5th in line. He's in the back of his team. His leadership of the team is not contingent upon his physical place, but on his role in the team. And what are his team members doing? They're protecting him. They're protecting him in multiple ways. One way they're protecting him is they're at the front of the pace, and they're keeping the pace high enough that other teams don't want to attack and try to challenge their leadership of the race. The other way they're protecting him is by keeping him in the front of the group where there's fewer crashes. So they're physically protecting him. And when the group gets into a big peloton, rather than strung out like it is here, they will actually surround him and put him in the middle of the group to protect him. Now, why do they do that? Well, his job is to protect the mission, the overall mission, which in Chris Froome's case is to win the overall Tour de France. He is the one who has to make the decisions about ignore those guys. They're just trying to get some TV time for their sponsors. They're not a threat to the winner of the race. And that's important. He's also the one who goes, no, we've got to go now. He's the person who has the plan for the day in his mind, the plan for the overall race in his mind, and also the person on the road who has to make decisions to change the tactics based on what's actually happening on the road. In other words, he's protecting the mission. In cycling, the team protects the leader. The leader protects the mission. Now, what does that look like in Toastmasters? Well, it might look like you doing your job so that your leader doesn't have to constantly follow up on you to make sure that your job has been done. It might look like providing positive and supportive evaluation to the leaders on your team in the same manner that you provide feedback to speakers, in a positive and supportive tone with the intention to help them grow. It might mean that as a leader, you're not micromanaging your team and that you're trusting them to do the work, giving them the goals, making sure they understand the plan, and letting them execute on the plan. And I'm sure you have other thoughts about what that might look like. But that's a very important part of protection. Cycling is also very important because of tradition. So early in my career, my team came up to me and goes, Matt, we got a big race this weekend and we've got a problem. I'm like, what's the problem? He goes, your legs. I'm like, what do you mean? My legs are chiseled. I am ready to go. There's no problem with my legs. My legs are not going to fail us. He goes, no, that's not it. He goes, you got hair on your legs. And I'm like, what? So imagine you're a 14, 15-year-old boy and you have to go to your mother and say, Mom, I need you to teach me to shave my legs. Now, my mother looks at me and goes, why? And I didn't have a good answer. So I called my coach. I'm like, Coach, why? Well, the reality is nobody really knows why cyclists shave their legs. There's a lot of theories out there, but there's no definitive answer. But the honest answer is they shave their legs because they've shaved their legs for 100 years. And they will continue to shave their legs. It's part of the culture of cycling, is for men to shave their legs. And it's an important culture. The icebreaker is an important cultural piece of Toastmasters. It is a tradition that binds us together. Anywhere in the world, you can go and have almost nothing in common with another Toastmaster. And to start a conversation, just say, tell me about your icebreaker. And all of a sudden you're connecting because you're feeling those same emotions. It's part of the tradition that binds us together. Your club, Toastmasters, has many traditions. The question to ask is, are they still serving us well? If they're serving you well, continue to do them. If they're neutral, continue to do them. If they're like they're not doing any harm. But if they are harmful, those are the ones you need to examine, because we know that there are some harmful traditions. We look at what's happened with the Greek sorority and fraternity system with hazing. That was a negative tradition that we're still trying in some cases to fight through. So honor tradition, because tradition binds us together. Some of you may recognize this face. Lance Armstrong. If you don't know the face, you might know the name. Lance Armstrong won 7 Tour de France's. And wait a second, did I just say that the record was 5? Well, throughout his career, there were rumors that he was using performance-enhancing drugs. And anytime anyone accused him, he always said the same thing. I've been tested more times than any athlete in history, and I've never failed a test, which was a lie. He had failed a test that had been covered up. And on top of that, he would destroy people who accused him. He would destroy their reputations, destroy their careers. Finally, after many years, he came out and confessed. Who else do Americans confess to but Oprah Winfrey on a paid presentation, and admitted that not only had he used enhancing drugs, he'd used them to such a level in such a meticulous way that we've never seen before or since. Winning isn't everything. Values are. It's so tempting to give somebody credit for a project that they didn't really do, to get an award at the end of the year. It's so tempting to accept a dual membership from somebody because you need that 20th member to be distinguished, but they're never going to be at your meeting. They're never going to be a participant. That's not winning. That's not sustainability. Our core value of integrity requires that we bring in members who intend to be a part of the club and intend to participate in the club. It requires that people complete their projects. Now, I'm not saying they have to check off every little line item in the project objectives, but there has to be a valid attempt to complete the project. And if they make a valid attempt, you give them the credit for it. But don't give somebody credit for a speech that they're going to do in 2 weeks just to get their award done before June 30th. That's not integrity. That's not respect for our core values in our organization. And if you have to cheat, did you really win? I don't think so. This is a picture from the 2018 Tour de France. And what you'll notice is there are 4 gentlemen holding up trophies, very large trophies. And they're all the same size. This is not first, second, third, and fourth. This is 4 different races within the race. The gentleman in white was the winner for the youngest rider under the age of 23. It's the youth rider category. The gentleman in yellow in 2018 was the overall winner of the Tour de France. He had the lowest total time. The gentleman in red and white is the mountain climber. He's the best climber, best at going uphill. And the gentleman in green, Peter Sagan, is generally recognized as one of the 2 or 3 best cyclists overall in the history of the sport. He was the best sprinter that year. There are other people who get recognized that don't have it. There's a team competition. There's a most combative rider, the person who mixed it up the most in the road. There's even an award called the Lanterne Rouge. And if you speak French, please, my apologies. I know I didn't say that very well. But that's for the person who finishes the race, finishes all stages of the race in last place. Because there is winning in just finishing the race sometimes. What are your goals? What are you working towards? Are you trying to be the sustained winner? Are you trying to be best in those moments of crisis? Are you trying to be best at the end of the race and you're that person who can take it across that finish line at the very end? Are you the new person who's just trying to learn and try to figure things out? Are you the person who's just trying to get through the year because of everything else you got? There is winning in all of those. There's winning for you. There's winning for the organization. Every time somebody completes their goal, it is a win for Toastmasters. And I've heard so many comments about, membership being down and we can't do this, we can't do that. Don't lose, and that's important, but don't lose sight of the members in your club who are reaching their goals. The clubs that are reaching their goals in the overall picture. Now we're just about done. I've got one more point here, and that's the mountains. This stage 12 of the Tour de France, was won by Geraint Thomas, who was the overall winner of the stage. He won the stage and he won the race. It was one of only 2 stages he won. Now, can you imagine climbing this? Now, this doesn't give you a real good picture, okay? So let me give you a little bit better picture of one of the climbs that day. This is what they climbed up. And I've been on this road and looked from pretty close to this perspective. That's not a camera trick. That's what it looks like going downhill or going uphill in this case. Now, Geraint Thomas is somewhere in this group. He is not the guy in the yellow jersey here. That's Lotto. I think he's probably hidden by the trees right now because it wasn't time for him to attack yet. But leaders are made in the mountains. Winners of the Tour de France win in the mountains. In fact, the saying is that you can't win the Tour de France on the flats. You can lose it on the flats, but you win it in the mountains, because this is where big time gaps occur and big differences in cycling ability show up. So in order to attack a mountain, whether it's a mountain at work, whether it's a mountain in Toastmasters, but if you feel you have a mountain, one is you need to know the profile. And that has been very challenging for us the last few years because we haven't known what we're facing. But I think we've got more clarity on what we're facing today. Your clubs need to make a decision about your future. Are we going to stay online? Are we going to be a hybrid club and invest the time and energy to make that a positive hybrid experience for all members? Or are we going to return to an in-person meeting? And I don't care as an organization which you choose. Whatever works best for the members of your club is what's important. But what I do anticipate is that you make the commitment to make that meeting, whatever format you hold it in, the best meeting you can possibly hold. That if you're going to hold a hybrid meeting, which is the most difficult form of a meeting to run well for everybody, you're going to have to make the investments in technology. You're going to need to make the investments in energy to sustain that club and to make sure that those who are in the physical location don't have a significantly better experience than those who are online. You want everyone to have a positive experience. And it's difficult. It's doable, but it takes commitment. So you've got to know the profile. And I think the profile is shifting less now than it has been over the last couple of years. The second thing is have a plan. There's so much you can learn about planning, but planning just, we know what we're going to try to do. Put the plan together. Now you have to be able to adjust the plan. You can't say, so, well, we said we're going to do this and the circumstances have changed, but we're going to do it anyway. You've got to have a plan and you have to have measured effort. If you're going up a mountain and you expend all of your energy in the first mile of a 5-mile climb, you're not going to reach the top of the mountain. Know what it takes for you to get there. And ideally, you've got the most energy left at the top of the mountain so that you can go out and conquer it. But you have to be prepared to change. You have to be prepared to change. If Toastmasters hadn't been prepared to change, and yes, we were forced into it, but if we hadn't been prepared to change 3 years ago, we would not be here as an organization. We had 15,000 clubs meeting in person and less than 100 meeting in any form of online meeting. And 90 days later, we had 15,000 clubs meeting online. In 90 days. Never changed as quickly and probably never will change that dramatically in that short a time again. And timing is everything. What you'll notice if you watch a mountain stage on the tour is all of these attacks. And some of them are real attacks and some of them are fake attacks just to shake things up. But the timing, some of these climbs have been climbed many times and people know where the key point is to make the attack because it has the most chance to stick. Timing is everything in Toastmasters too, not just in a speech. We know how important timing is in a speech, but timing is everything when you start working. Leaders perform in the mountains. Leaders win when the going gets tough. That's when your leadership has to come out. And we've been in tough times. And club leaders, I appreciate your efforts this year to rebuild our club strength, to help support all of our members in achieving their goals. The magic of Toastmasters happens in the clubs. And we've been in the mountains trying to get out of this valley that we've been in. And I have my confidence in you that you can perform, that you can rebuild the number of members in your clubs, that you can help all of your members achieve excellence, that you can have amazing meetings. And you're going to learn more throughout this TLI about how to have amazing meetings and learn more techniques and tools for how to enhance your leadership in whatever officer role you're in, so that we can have great clubs throughout District 44. So to summarize, and you can take these notes, I'm not going to go over all of them, but are you leading the Peloton in your leadership position? Or are you just following along? Are you exercising your influence in a positive way? Are you avoiding distraction? Are you working together as a team? Are you protecting the leader? If you're the leader, are you protecting the mission? Are you honoring your traditions, following our values, knowing your goals, and performing in the mountains? If you are the leader that your team needs, that your club needs, that your area needs, that your division needs, Kari, that your district needs in order to reach its goals this year. Thank you for all you do for our members in District 44. It is an honor to be with you today. Madam District Director.